welcome Preston Ridge and everyone joining us this morning, and Happy New Year. We finally made it to 2021, and we hope that your new year has started off wonderfully and on the right foot. We are online only today as we wrap up the holiday season, and I hope you enjoy this message from Gerald. You can get the bulletin for today at this QR code, and you can also access that on the main page of our website, prestonridge.org. That's full of information about what's coming in the new year and some things that you can be involved in January, things for our students, and a missions opportunity for us to help some kids and families very far away. So check out the bulletin for more information on that, and I'll see you after the service.
Good morning. This is the first Sunday in January of 2021. And we're coming to you online only today, and I wanted to bring you a message that I think will kind of help set the pace for 2021. I want to talk about one thing, and it is found in Philippians chapter 3, verses 13 and 14. I take a little section out simply because it really doesn't add into what we're talking about today. And I'll also let you know that I have preached this text before. I went back in my notes and I found that I preached this in 2004. So I think it's pretty safe that you guys don't remember everything about it. Plus, it's not the same sermon. It's just the same text. I want to talk to you about this passage, but first let me read it to you. And I'm going to start in verse 13 as Paul has already begun to speak. He says, "But one thing I do, forgetting what is behind and straining towards what is ahead, I press on toward the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus." Now, there's one thing I want to start off by saying. When Paul talks about this one thing, he says he's pressing forward to a prize. He does not describe that prize. And so a lot of commentators, a lot of scholars really talk a lot about this, but it's all conjecture. He's not talking about something in particular, because then the particular prize that he is straining towards would be different from everyone else. But it is like the prize all of us have. And that prize is simply this: we want to do on this earth what Jesus called us to do. And the prize is accomplishing what Jesus put us here on this earth to do. So for you, that's one thing. For me, it's something different. For Paul, it was a different thing. Paul was a very unique individual. But this passage talks about one thing I do. If you were to read this passage in the original language, which was Greek, you'd find out that there's a couple of English words not even present in the text. We put them in there to try to understand it. But I think it kind of takes away from the impact. The two words would be taken away, and what you'd be left with is one thing. One thing is not enough on its own, because you have to understand the intent out of that. As one guy wrote, one commentator said, you have to say it almost agitated, staccato, abrupt. It's as though Paul has just been talking about what it means to be held, to grasp the thing that Jesus grasped him for. That's the last part of that. The first part of that passage. Paul says, "I want to take everything and pull it tight into myself, for which Jesus took me. I want to grab all that he has for me." And then he finishes it with these one words to introduce the rest. And he says, "One thing." It's not one thing I do. It's not a very easy passage. It's not something that's a simple line here. He says it with intensity. One thing. And then he describes what that one thing is. The one thing is his motto for life. If you take all that Paul wrote about and you encapsulated everything that he gave to the church and everything that he said he was about, it would always come back to the motto by which he lived his life. One thing. This one thing is actually two parts. Now that might confuse you just a little bit, because it sounds as though he says, this one thing I do this and I do this. But I would like to describe it this way. This one thing that Paul does is a unified statement. Now, for some of you that have played golf with me before, I'm going to apologize up front, because I'm going to say a couple of things about golf. And when I say that, you're going to say you have no room to talk about golf because you're not that good. And I agree, I'm not that good. But when I first started off playing golf, I majored on all the different parts of playing golf as far as the swing. So I learned about the hand grip, and then I learned exactly where you place the clubs, where the head of the club should be. But the real biggie was the swing. And I learned that it was two parts. There is the backswing, and there's the follow-through. And so I brought a golf club just to kind of tell you what I'm talking about, because the first time I ever played golf, I took this club, and I'm not going to use both hands because I really look bad, so I'm just going to use one hand today. But I took the club, and I took it back as far as I could, as far as I possibly could. Because what I was going to do is I was going to hit this ball a mile. I knew I was. I knew I was going to be amazing at this. And so I took it all the way back, and then I was swinging with all my might. And when I did that, I missed the ball. And when I didn't miss the ball, I topped the ball. And when I didn't top the ball, I sent it in a different direction than what I wanted, because I didn't understand the backswing. So I started focusing on the backswing. And the backswing, what they told me was that I was taking it too far back. Instead, I needed to take it level. I hope that's level. And then I would come through. So the next thing that I did after that is I began to take the backswing, and I would take it to the right place, and I would stop. Now, anybody knows anything about golf, that's not the right way to do it. You don't take it to the correct position and stop, because I've just lost all the force that I was going to bring to hitting the ball. So there's the backswing, and there's the follow-through. And the follow-through is something you have to major on too. I had to learn to not move my hips when doing that. I had to learn to keep my head down, because I was going to hit such a great shot. I need to look, right? That's kind of the way we think about it. But the backswing and follow-through are actually one thing. Because if I only do the backswing, guess what? The ball doesn't move anywhere because I have no follow-through. And if I try to attempt to follow through with no backswing, well, I might end up kind of putting the ball, but I can't really hit the ball. Paul is describing one action. He is describing a transfer of power, if you will. It's the same thing if I went back and I was to throw a ball. It's the same thing that if I were to take a gun and to put a round in it and I was to shoot. It is a transfer of power. There's a pushback and there's a forward motion. Paul says, my pushback, my first part of my one motion is simply this. I am going to forget what is behind. I'm going to forget what is behind before I can press toward the goal. This is the one thing. The one thing is encapsulated in this one smooth motion that the Apostle Paul lived his life by. Always willing to forget what is behind. Always eager, straining forward for the goal for which Jesus had called him. The first part, that forgetting what is behind, is the part that so many people have trouble with. And it's as though we're raised with not forgetting what is behind. When my firstborn was just a young child, we'd go over to somebody's house and she'd take a toy or take several toys, and she wanted to play with her toys with her friend at her friend's house. Often we would get ready to go, and I would ask her, or Mom, Tammy was always better about catching this stuff. She'd say, "Where is your," and she'd name the toy. Ashley had forgotten it. She just left it. It wasn't a big deal to her. The one thing about Ashley, all of her young life, is she didn't really care about things very much. She was eager to give her toys away. She was eager if somebody gave her money. In fact, I remember one time somebody had given her, I think it was a $20 bill when she was a little girl, and one of her friends came over and saw the $20 bill and said, "I've never had that." And she said, "Take it." Because for her, it was very easy to let stuff go. It just wasn't important to her. But I was raised a different way. I was raised in which stuff was a qualifier. Stuff marked where we were in life. And being a baby boomer, stuff is kind of the way we judge whether or not we're successful in life. In other words, if you think you have too much stuff for your house, get a bigger house. If you think your garage is not big enough for all your stuff, get a bigger garage with the bigger house. It's always that way. If your Christmas tree has too many decorations, well, don't add it, just get a bigger Christmas tree. This is kind of the way in which I saw life, but as I get older, in the last few years, I've seen a real joy coming out of simplifying, of having less, of leaving things behind. And so that's been an important part of my life, in my growth, in my maturing. But Paul knew this from a very early age, because he made a radical shift in which he left behind. You see, Paul was he was attaining a prominent rank as a person who was religious, who persecuted Christianity. And he left it all behind. He forgot all of that. And as he forgot all of that, he was able to move forward towards what Jesus had for him. Now let me just say to you, Paul was a man who valued simplicity, but I can't think that it came easily. You see, some of the things that we have to forget, some of the things that we have to put behind us are not easy things to put behind us. Can you imagine what it must have been like to be the Apostle Paul and to remember the faces of those that he persecuted? You know, that could have so eaten up his life that he never went forward. He could have said to himself, because of what I did to try to derail the cause of Christ, to lock up Christians, to put them out of the business of telling other people about Christ, because I was so adamant and actually so good at that, that at this point in my life, I just don't think I can move forward because people would think I was a joke. People would never trust me. People would never have any confidence in what I was saying. I just can't. I am too guilty. Some Christians live that way. Some Christians live with way too much guilt. They don't understand that when Jesus came into their lives and he forgave their sins, he continued to forgive our sins. No one comes to Christ and gets forgiven of all their sins and then from that moment on doesn't sin anymore. And so what begins is we get in our hearts, I've done this now since I trusted Christ, or I did this, or I failed him here, and I just don't think I can really go forward. The secret is one thing. Forget what's behind and strain, press forward to become everything Jesus has for me to be. That's what the Apostle Paul was saying. This is his motto. I can't live in the past because I have a future that must happen. Now, for the past year, I know that many of us have had things that have happened that we have not been happy about, we've not been satisfied, we have not had our hopes met. There's so many things that have been disappointments and regrets. But the first step is simply this. You have to forget the things that you have left behind. And let me be true about this. You've already left them behind. So truly leave them behind. Yesterday is gone. You can't get it back. You can't change yesterday. You can't do anything except try to bring that stuff with you, and it doesn't work. Years ago, I heard someone say that no one runs forward looking backward. Of course not. You would fall over your own feet. You would run into a tree. You would stumble. You would no longer have the right direction. You can't tell where you're going. You're going to hurt yourself. That's all Paul is really saying. I can't keep looking back. I can't keep holding on. I can't carry all this stuff into the future. And for us, every year we have a chance to not carry stuff into the future. And some of that stuff absolutely needs to be left in the past. Friendships that didn't go exactly right. Places where someone failed you or you failed them. Grudges. It's hard to believe, but even as Christians, we can still have grudges. We can still just keep carrying stuff over, and we think we have totally left it behind until something happens and it flares back up again, and we think, man, where did that come from? My heart was ready to just ignite into anger over that. Well, that's a grudge. You need to leave that behind. Missed opportunities for 2020. Well, there were a lot of them, weren't there? A lot of them. I'd planned on going on a mission trip in 2020. Well, that didn't happen. We'll still see what happens in 2021. There were things that we wanted to do in 2020 that we did not do. And I can sit around and think about that, and I can hold on to that. But the problem is I'm trying to move forward while looking backward. The Apostle Paul said, I have learned to let go of the way that I failed. I've learned to let go of the pain that it has hurt me. I've learned to let go of the pain from other people hurting me. I've learned to let go of the absolute frustration and the way it just ate at my soul when someone disappointed me. Someone wasn't true to me. Someone wasn't honest with me. You know, I asked a few people earlier this week. I sent a few texts out and I asked people, I said, what do you think happened in 2020? What broke? What was damaged in 2020 that you need to not have broken in 2021? The number one answer was trust. Trust. Some people even remarked on, I've learned who to trust this year. Some people I learned I can truly trust, and a lot of people I learned I could not. People talked about not trusting the government anymore. People talked about not trusting medical anymore. I mean, all kinds of answers of no trust, no trust, no trust. Listen, we cannot keep going forward if we can't trust. We still have to trust. We still have to trust one another. We still have to trust God. I've said it before, in many situations, year after year, the last year did not take God by surprise. He wasn't shocked by it. He wasn't powerless. There are things I believe that God did in the last year that you and I probably will not know until eternity. God is always working. God is always actually victorious. We just aren't seeing the scoreboard correctly right now. So we need to learn to not be hampered by looking backward. Paul says he forgets those things that are behind. And then he said he was going to reach forward. He was going to strain towards what is ahead. Now again, I said it a moment ago about golf, that with no backswing, the ball's not going to go forward. With no follow through, the ball will not go forward. You'll just be showing everybody your pretty backswing. So what? If you want to advance the ball, you have to put those two together. Paul said he was straining. I mean, this is why that staccato, abrupt, one thing. It is him lined up as an athlete, ready to give it all he has. Because he wanted to be like Jesus, and he wanted to do what Jesus brought him into this world to do. How does that line up with the way you feel about your service for Christ this year? Are you coasting? It's understandable. A lot of people are. A lot of people aren't just coasting, but they believe that the tides have pushed them back. The current is taking them in the wrong direction. Then I would encourage you to strain a little bit. In fact, I would encourage you to strain a lot. I would encourage you to be actively engaged in leaving behind what needs to be left behind. Forgiving when you need to forgive. Forgetting as much as you are able, and still pushing forward to trust that God is doing something in your life and is going to do something in your life this year. In fact, in our nation this year. In fact, in our world this year. God is moving us forward to accomplish what Jesus came to this world to do. To seek and to save that which is lost. To bring glory to God the Father. To bring men to himself. This is what God is doing. You don't hear this on the news. Nobody's going to report on the news tonight about how many people in the past week or month or year have accepted Christ or have turned their lives over to following him, or how many people are dedicated to him, or how many people God has blessed this year, or what is happening in people. You're not going to hear any of that stuff. So what we do is we turn on the news, we hear commentary, and all we hear is bad. Bad and bad and bad and bad. But that's not the story for children of God. We follow the King. We follow his agenda. Paul totally understood that and said, I'm not going to let anything slow me down, hold me back. I am going to race forward. So we have to still give our lives to Christ. We have to move forward with that. The stuff is not important, but Jesus is. What are the things ahead of you this year? Well, as we move forward into 2021, Jesus is not just with us, he's already ahead of us every step of the way. He is there putting things in place that need to happen. We will not always understand those things. We definitely will not know they're coming. There are going to be so many things that will come into our lives this year, and I'm not trying to be scary. I'm simply saying things come into our lives, good things, bad things, and different things, but we didn't expect those things. Jesus is ahead of you. And if you have not walked with him in the past, this is your year. This is your year to absolutely strain forward. Forget those things and to strain forward, because service is ahead of you this year. For me too. Serving others. We need to find new ways to do that. We need to serve with more compassion and more of a fervor and intensity than we ever have before. Paul's idea, straining towards. And then, honestly, the rewards that God will give us are ahead of us. He's going to bless our lives this year. And many times the blessings of God are things that we don't even notice. They just happen because we're so used to God being a good God that when something is not good, that's when we notice. But God has a lot of goodness ahead of us this year. And then down the road, heaven is before us. The chance to be back with the Lord forever. The chance to be with people that have gone on before us. All those things are ahead of us, but I promise you, there's things that we can do for Christ this year. There are many things that we can do for Christ this year. There's many people we can help this year. There are things that God wants to grow you in and me in this year. We need to grow in faith. We need to grow in so many ways. We need to become people that are more generous. Generosity is what truly fuels the passion that we have in our hearts. When we're generous, we're most like God. When we're generous, we're able to pour out blessings upon people, and the blessings even come back to us because we see what God is doing in our lives. This year, we need to pray more. Somebody wrote me this last week, another pastor, and he said, I'm praying for you this year that you will, as adversity happens, you will pray harder. And I texted back and I said, you have the right prayer for me then. Because that's what I need to do. I need to pray with more intensity and more belief that God is hearing me. As tough times come, I need to pray more. So what I'm asking you today as we begin this first service is to perform an operation upon yourself. Cut loose the stuff that you're holding on to and instead strain forward. Follow the motto that Paul gives us in this thing. One thing. One thing. And when we do that, we won't be lukewarm. When we do that, we won't be average people. We will be people on a mission for Christ with a purpose, who are straining forward. One thing. Become like Christ. Serve Christ. And that's my prayer for us in 2021. The one thing. God bless you guys. I hope you have a great day. And I'm looking forward to being with you next week as we begin a new series, Unstuck. Be with us then.
Thanks, Gerald, and thank you everyone for joining us this morning. We hope that you were blessed by what the Lord had to say through Gerald, and we hope you have an amazing start to your new year, and we look forward to seeing you guys in person next week for life groups at 9:15 and worship service at 10:30. Until then, have a great day, and we'll see you next time.